Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we tackle the tough issues, the issues that affect the customer experience at your stores. Whether it's the front of the house, the back of the house, doesn't really matter because the greater the experience that customers have, the more they'll come back to you for everything they need when they need it. And I bring on the experts here to share with you what they've done or what they do now to help improve that. And this week's no exception. My buddy Joe Clementi is with us, and we're furthering the leadership series. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks, Paul. Really excited about tonight. I think we have some great content that's going to connect. It's not theory, it's practical applications.
I tell my dealers all the time, this is not something learned from a PowerPoint or video. This comes from real world experience in the field doing it. So, Joe, for the few folks that may not know you, whether they watch now or on the replay, why don't you give us your story and then we'll jump right into it.
Yeah, let me just tell you who I am. Coach Joe. I'm the Executive Vice President with Traver Connect. More importantly, I help your environment, dealers across the country, tie the right behaviors to the friction points and remove those friction points so you get results. Tonight, we're going to talk about the 5 disciplines. We're going to give you practical behaviors. We're going to give you things that you can actually do Monday morning and make a difference.
All right, I'm just going into the stream here. Okay, it looks like we have ignition. StreamYard has been extremely problematic. It gives weird codes and things like that. It says you're not live when in fact you are live because I'm watching it. So I'm going to have to maybe come up with a different plan here as far as the stream, but we're here and that's all that matters.
Yep.
Thanks a lot, man. So we're talking about the leadership rhythm, how to turn chaos into process. Chaos. Is there chaos in dealerships, Joe? Is that true?
Yeah. Hey, let's start out with a real story, right? The moment that everybody in the fixed operations world can recognize. Monday morning, it's chaos in the service lane. Phones are ringing, advisors are busy. You got the service drive buzzing. You got managers roaming around, and the service director steps into the lane and probably says something we've all heard before. Hey, advisors, we need to do a better job presenting recommended services. And by Wednesday, almost nothing's different.
You know,
the reason why, though, is because most leaders assume the problem is effort. But it's something more powerful. And I'll relate that. I always provide some science in these meetings because I think there's relevancy to it. The real issue is something more powerful. Human behavior follows what psychologists call normative cognition. Let me put it to you in simple terms. People don't default to their best behavior. They default to the most familiar behavior.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in a high pressure environment like the service lane, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that becomes the norm now, right? That's the way we do things. It just becomes the norm. So a challenge for the audience might be, what behavior becomes the default habit in your store when things are really busy? That's something to ponder. We're going to talk about that leadership today, Paul, and why it's so different from looking at the metrics, staring at a scoreboard.
Yeah, we got a little buffering going on, Joe. We got a lot of buffering going on. Joe, I don't know if you can hear me, but you are frozen on the screen. All right, let me text Joe. He appears to be frozen on screen. Frozen on screen. Okay, I think he just jumped out. He'll jump back in. Should be back on in just a moment. Restart the browser. We're having technical difficulties, so please stand by. All right, Joe's trying to restart his browser, so let's wait till Joe comes back on. My good friend David Kokenauer has said for years, technology works 70% of the time. The other 30%, we just kind of have to deal with that. This StreamYard seems to be more and more problematic as the weeks go on. They keep coming up with all these new features. I don't need new features. I just need the old features to work. So they're kind of forgetting who their customer is. Let's see what Joe has to say. Okay. I'm going to have him see if he can switch over to Firefox. I've noticed some incompatibility issues between Chrome and StreamYard. So I'm in Firefox and it seems to be working. So let's wait for Joe here. He doesn't have Firefox. Okay. Just going to try to load in Chrome again and let's see what happens. I remember on other occasions we've had audio issues, video issues, and now we have frozen issues. Let's give them a few minutes here. Did something to his laptop. It's frozen now. Okay. Control. Alt. Delete. Shut down. Browser. Process. And an email comes through, something about stress. Manage stress. Couldn't be a more appropriate time. Oh, well, what are you going to do? Technology happens. Let's hope Joe has luck getting back on. Anybody else have fun browser stories or StreamYard issues, we'll say? Kenneth Dunner. Savor the flavor of the awesomeness in you peeps from Sugarland, Texas, just southwest of Houston, USA. Kenneth, we are having some StreamYard issues, and Joe is trying to restart his browser. It was frozen. Gave him instructions on how to unfreeze it, so hopefully he'll be on in just a moment. Otherwise, we may have to scrap it and try another time. But at least let's give it a shot. Okay, looks like he's back in. Let's see what happens. Okay, you're back in, Joe.
Wow. Well, that was rather interesting. I don't have this issue. I don't know what happened.
I'm going to go it's a StreamYard issue. There's some incompatibility between Chrome and StreamYard.
Yeah, it must be. I've never had this issue before, so.
Control-Alt-Delete, that's it. You were able to shut down the browser and then restart it?
Yeah. It had to shut down completely, and I had to restart the whole thing. It's kind of
all
weird.
Right.
Well, we all left off at the topics we were talking about, and sorry for everybody that's on the line, but we're talking about behaviors and why it's so important to create what we call the leadership shift. So I don't know where you want to pick up, Paul, but I'm good if you want to start at the topic.
No, that's a good topic. You know, I just want to stress that leadership today, they're overloaded with dashboards, KPIs, and all kinds of metrics. They watch numbers, but they don't change behavior, right? They're looking at the wrong thing. And I've been saying for years, we spend an inordinate amount of time looking at all the metrics as opposed to focusing on the things that we need to do. If we do the things that need to be done, then all the other problems kind of fade into the woodwork, right? So let's pick up, there where you had left off before.
Yeah, I think you said it well. Metrics report performance, but behavior is what creates it. So once a leader understands that, the questions change. They go from not, hey, how do we fix this? But what behavior produced the number? And I call that the leadership rhythm. So let's open up with discipline number 1, the outcome rule. All right. And we want to do tangible things so that people have something they can actually apply. So when we talked about a little bit earlier, right, Paul, we chase the metric. We look for the result to be somewhat predictable, but it's always a lagging detail. And what happens is, as people get busier, the results become less predictable. Overload doesn't mean more priority. They just need one clear focus. So one behavior, this is the task. One behavior for the week, not 5, not 10, 1. So what do you do come Monday morning? If one thing improved this week, what would create the most value? Maybe it's something like we need all update calls before noon, status calls. Maybe it's, if we're going to do recommended services, we need to make sure that we explain the value of that recommended service. Maybe it's active deliveries. Hey, we need to do a better job because we're doing more mobile active deliveries.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to do a better job with that. When the focus becomes clearer, execution is cleaner. So what is the one thing that if you improved it this week, you get the most value out of?
So they have, I mean, there are several parts of the process that they do every day, but you're saying tackle it one piece at a time. Master the basics one step at a time.
Yeah, if you focus on one thing with your team a week, one area, that will drive a better behavior. Because remember, people will fall back on the things that are behavior driven, that are most common, that they're used to. It becomes their norm, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to change that behavior. So that's discipline too, the behavior before the metric. Most managers, especially younger, more inexperienced managers, they stop at the numbers.
Right.
More experienced leaders take it further, right? They don't look at the number as just an outcome, it's a behavior. Behavior is the lever to produce the outcome. So here's what I always try to teach. Before saying something, hey, Paul, we need to do this better, we need to define what that behavior is going to look like. So let's talk about recommended services, because that's a common thing. People like to call it upsells. I'm a recommended services kind of guy.
Well, hold on one second, Joe. Before we go on to that, I think the number one fundamental issue where it starts is at the very top, right? Because ownership and dealer principals are not necessarily focused on the behavior. They're focused dead on the numbers. So if they're focused on the numbers, then the management, now they're rattled because now they're focused on the numbers. So they're not necessarily focusing on the behavior.
Well, the way you change the numbers effectively, so when you're having that meeting with your stakeholders, the GM, the owner, maybe it's your fixed ops manager, whatever, whoever you're reporting to about those numbers, you really want to drive the behavior. In order to drive the results, you have to improve the behavior. That's really the most important attribute. So if you're thinking about this as a manager and the driver, a service director, maybe a fixed operations manager overseeing a few stores, if all you're driving is the metric, you're not going to change the behavior that gets the result. That's really important. So I say it, let's use this recommended services as like a behavior change.
Yeah.
What do? How do we change the behavior to get the result? State the technician. What did they find? Explain the risk of waiting to the customer. Explain the benefits of doing it today. Ask for their approval. Sometimes it's just the standards of behavior that changes the outcome.
Now, a lot of times, there's no standardized way that they deliver this.
And well, that's a great question. I think I understand where you're going with it. There's no standard way of stating, hey, we're going to focus on this. We're going to focus on the behavior, not the metric. So the way you standardize that is you change the conversations. So I'll give you an example. Service manager said to me, hey, coach, my customers keep calling in for updates. I don't know why my service advisors can't keep up. Why aren't they calling people, right? That's an outcome. That's not a behavior change.
Right.
So the manager said, hey, Paul, I need you to communicate better. You better start doing those status calls. Did that change their behavior at all?
Not at all.
Not at all. So communicate better isn't the behavior. It's a hope.
Right.
So if you define the behavior, like, for example, check the progress of the technician by 11, right?
Yeah.
Call the customers before noon. Share 3 things that you found. I'm just giving you examples. Like, what's the current status? When are we going to be expected to be completed? What's the parts issues? So we give those statuses so people feel connected to where their vehicle is in the process. Remember, they're the only one that counts, right? Is the customer.
Right.
So as an advisor and as a manager, if we're only basing our progress on hope, hey, Paul, communicate better, we know that's short-lived and it's not going to change the outcome. That's what we're talking about in terms of changing the behavior and not the metric. The metric is a byproduct.
Now, as far as changing the behavior, we need to map it out for them, right? One of the biggest issues that we have is the number of incoming status calls. So I'm a huge proponent of telling the customer flat out, I've set the expectations with the customer. This is what time you're in. We should be able to get to your car between 10 and 11, so there's no need to call in. You'll get your first status update no later than 11 a.m., okay? And when I call you with the status update, you're going to have in front of you a multi-point inspection which lays out the issues that are involved with your car. And then once you authorize the repair, at that point, we'll have a more realistic ready time. But in mapping it out, people communicate different ways. I like to write it down, and I like to give the customer that. And this is what I've come up with. This maps out the visit. This tells them where they are. This tells them, based on the workload, we're going to get to your car by a certain time, and expect the status update call by a certain time. Once we talk and you authorize the work, at that point, I'll be able to give you a realistic ready time. And I'll call your next status update will come at 3 o'clock or whatever it is. That way you've set the expectations, and it's a two-way accountability street where if it's written down, it's hard to miss that, right?
Yeah, and I love where you're going with this, which is mapping out what the behavior should emulate. And when you think about chasing a metric, you got to design the behavior that creates the outcome.
There you go.
That's the impact. And that's discipline number 2.
I like it.
So let's move on to discipline 3. One of the hardest things for managers to do, I call it the 10-minute alignment. So here's where most lose the week, right? Monday's pretty good. Tuesday gets a little bit clearer. And then by Wednesday, we start to lose this because there's a little bit of the chaoticness. We're putting out fires, right, Paul? That's most common. Because pressure pulls people back into what? Habit. Research from Google's Project Aristotle. You probably have read this research yourself. But it found something really powerful. 2 of the strongest drivers of effective teams are clarity and shared understanding. Clarity and shared understanding. And something simple creates both. 10 minutes. 10 minutes can redirect the entire week. So here's what we do. Here's a practical application. Midweek, you're going to ask 3 questions. What's working? Where is it breaking? What do we do to adjust? It's enough. Clarity resets the execution. 10 minutes, we call them huddles.
Yeah.
10-minute huddles is really all you need to bring back that clarity. That's discipline number 3. So I ask, if your team met for 10 minutes, what behavior would you realign first? Is it the status call? Is it the write-up expectation? Is it presenting all the recommended repairs? Is it clarity and dispatch? There are a few things. Remember rule number 1, one thing.
Right.
It's on one thing, not 10.
In the in the presentation part of it, right? The OEM outlines what you're going to do. Now it's just a question of relaying that information to the customer and then making it in a way that they can understand it. So for instance, a lot of times we don't do the walk around or we don't greet the customer in the drive. Yeah. We have a porter that greets the customer in the drive. Okay, best case scenario, customer comes out, goes over to the desk. Sign here, and they're on their way. There's nothing that's explained to the customer, right? Nobody does anything until they know what's in it for them. So we have to give them what their value proposition is in doing this. So when we meet them at the car, now the outside world, the Jiffy Lubes, the Express Lubes, they have convinced the automotive world that all their car ever needs is an oil change, right? A lot of customers come in, I need an oil change. We need to redefine that because, for instance, at a 30,000 mile service, the OEMs, most of them, recommend all these items. And now you can go down your list. Hey, yes, an oil and filter change. Here's what you need and why. But there's other things on here, right? Air filter. We can talk about fuel efficiency and how a dirty air filter impacts fuel economy. With the price of gas in my area, you just went to $3.46. If a dirty air filter impacts it by 10% or 20%, whatever it is, that can be calculated into a dollar amount that costs them more at the pump. When you talk about cabin filters, right? It's very basic. People don't understand what the hell a cabin filter does. You ask them, Joe, you watch TV, right?
Yeah.
You ever see any allergy commercials while you're watching TV?
I do.
How many do you see?
Oh, tons. Yeah. There's tons. One after the other, right?
So the OEM who manufactured the car recommends at the 30,000 mile point replacing that filter. Otherwise, you're breathing in all those allergens. And if you had an old filter next to a new one that you can show them side by side, hold it up to the light, they understand that better. They're more inclined to spend $100 or $110, whatever it is, as opposed to buying that stuff on Amazon for $40 and trying it themselves. Mike Vogel shows up here. He's a LinkedIn user. It says, Mr. Foodie and the coach, lots of knowledge tonight. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, coach.
He says, what's in it for them, not you? Correct. Yeah. Nobody cares about us. They care about them.
It's the value proposition. And what we're talking about tonight, and these disciplines are designed to change the behavior. And what you're talking about is mapping out the process, vital. But what we really want to do, if we're going to change the way that people, they're normative, right? What they normally stay focused on, we've got to make it simple for them. So we focus on one element. It's really important that if you're showing an example of a recommended service as just an example, it's vital that you explain the value proposition, but to change the behavior, stop looking only at the metric and focus on how it's being delivered. That's going to change the behavior. We're often just chasing the outcome. And as an advisor, what do you think happens? Hey, Paul, I've got to present all these things to you. I'm gonna be a little melodramatic for the purpose of the show. But hey, Paul, you know this list that I have, I got to present it all to you. And it's going to be about $385. Do you want to do it? Because the tech's got it in the shop now. Right? Now we're doing it as a task rather than a value-added approach of saying, this is why you should do it. This is what the benefit is. Remember, we're trying to alter the behavior, not the outcome. So what is all that relevant to? Well, let's go back a step. We talked earlier about chasing the metric. When the metrics are low on recommended services or hours per RO, or pick any metric you want, right? The first thing we want to do is, hey, Paul, why are your numbers so low? Why are you worse than this person? Why aren't you at our standard? And we're taking the wrong approach. Remember, people go to the normative. So we have to work on the behavior. And that's why we built these 5 disciplines, because they're easy to implement. They're not overwhelming. But I love where you were going with that, not to change the topic, but it's really important to map it out. But ultimately, we're shooting for behavior change.
It needs to be a major shift to behavior from outcome, because it's the behavior that dictates the outcome. Why look at the end result when the behavior is what dictates the end result?
Right. So we gave you 3 actual disciplines. I think we'll connect that with this because you led into a great segue. We call it the 30-second coaching moment. This is where leadership becomes real. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? Most managers or coaches wait too long to coach. They save feedback for a big meeting. They save feedback for when the call comes from the main office, from the GM or the owner down. They save that in that moment. But behavior changes fast when you're in the moment, right after the interaction. So I would say, just as an example, and this is an applicable place, Paul, hey, great job of explaining the risk before asking for the sale. Because what gets noticed gets repeated. And what gets repeated becomes part of your culture. It's a behavior change. I might even do it the opposite way. Hey, Paul, you did a great job of mentioning the service, but you skipped the value.
Right. Jerry Davis says customer retention is the only metric that should be chased. How likely are they to come back? Well, did we take care of them? How well did we take care of them?
Yeah, I align with that, Jerry. And I think exactly what you're talking about is the one metric you want to chase is your retention. Are people coming back? But remember, we're talking about core behavior change. If we're chasing a metric is a byproduct. Even retention is a lagging result of the actual behavior happening in the service drive, right?
Yeah, 100%.
The behavior that's happening that's creating the outcome. So I use a really melodramatic approach to presenting you my services. When Paul says no, what's he likely to do when he goes back home? Hey, that guy Joe, all he tried to do is sell me another $385 service, and I don't even know what it does. Right?
Yeah.
What does the manager do to Joe? Hey, Joe, why are your numbers so low? I don't know, boss. I'm presenting it every time. Right? That's a cognitive disconnect. That's what we're trying to talk about tonight, is really give us actual behaviors that we can alter, but just practical applications. Nothing deep, just practical. So I always say the best time is a 30-second coaching moment.
Mike Vogel says, my mantra for over 20 years, trust built in every visit, value show in what you are suggesting, convenience be as convenient as possible based on their needs, and wow, create a wow as often as possible. Now, that's 100%. What you're talking about is each behavior each time. And it's important for people to understand that starts at the very beginning. Right? If you set the expectation at the very beginning, like at the first interaction, and then you deliver on that, so that you show them that you've earned their trust, you're delivering what you promise you will, and you follow that up with each subsequent visit. Because in the beginning, when your car is brand new, you're going in for the first service, there's not much really that's done. So you start with baby steps. That's where you start building the foundation of the steps that you're talking about. On the second visit, you follow up on that. On the third, by the time they come in and they need more work, you've already earned their trust so that they're more receptive to listening to what the explanation is. Because the problem I see, and I'm in stores like you every day, the problem I see is that the trust isn't earned, it's expected. So when that customer comes in for what they're thinking is a $90 job, and there's no explanation, and they get a call that, oh, great, we just did a multi-point inspection, and you need $400 worth of work, the wall's already there. Because, look, let's face it, their car is not going to run any better or worse as far as what they can feel in exchanging the money with you, because there's no trust, there's no understanding. When somebody comes in and we do a multi-point inspection and we tell them, hey, great news, your brake pads are down to 2 millimeters and we need to replace them for $500. Joe, were you having any problems with your brakes? No. The measurement.
Maybe I noticed a little bit harder press on the brake pedal, but realistically, most people aren't. They're not going to notice those things. And they're intangible, right? So if you're not mechanically inclined, how do you know what your brakes are? Unless someone shows you.
No idea.
Right? Unless they show you why it matters, unless they deliver the value proposition, it's just an added expense. And why these are all important, because I think you're providing great framework for process. I'll go back to the reason this whole content was derived was around the behavior.
Yeah.
We can't change the behavior and we keep chasing the metric, especially on a busy Monday morning when it's chaos, when people are working really hard, they are always going to fall back on the normative. And so what becomes normal becomes your standard. And so what we're talking about is 4 or 5 things that a director or manager, anyone in the dealership can do that will help focus those behaviors one step at a time. When you build on those behaviors, all of a sudden you start to see things compound. We call it traction. One item leads to the next, leads to the next. However, what most people do, to your point earlier, we got to do all 5 of these things, and we got to get better at it, Paul. Well, that doesn't change behavior. All that is directional. So I'm going to go to my last one because I think it's relevant. I call it the Friday Learning Lab. So I'm going to tie it together. Research from Harvard on deliberate practice shows improvement comes from reflection. Reflection turns experience into learning. So I'll use a real scenario. I was at a BDC group that we do their training for, and I sat with a BDM, and she said, I thought my agents had a performance problem. It wasn't performance, it was chaos. Inbound calls, campaigns, texts, managers wanting numbers, everything sounded like it was rushed, right?
Yeah.
So what do? We changed the behavior to focus on one thing. Slow down, explain the value, ask for the appointment. One thing. All of a sudden, she's saying the results are increased. The byproduct is more appointments. We're getting better at getting our first appointment. The phones never slowed down, Paul. The agents did.
Right.
And when the agents slow down, customers listen more, appointments improved, and all of a sudden you have this rhythm, this balance. And that's what we're talking about. These 5 disciplines are a step-by-step process that you can have with your team, implement them slowly, and the results are the byproduct. What happens though, and I've done a lot of these learning and development sessions, most people see the chaos.
Right.
What they are having difficulty with is directing the behavior to slow the chaos. Chaos is a result of not knowing exactly how to change the behavior. That's why this is so important. And in this context, If you paused every Friday, and that's why I use Friday, because Friday's different for everyone. Friday doesn't literally have to be Friday if you're on a 4-day work week. But if you study the week, you actually learn the behaviors. So I'll use another example, Paul, because I think it's a real example. You're in a busy service drive and it's a Wednesday afternoon. You have 3 advisors. Everyone's busy, right? Trying to pick up the phones, trying to answer the phones, trying to make appointments, doing status calls, and receiving customers in the service drive. What do you think happens from a behavior mindset?
It goes out the window because they're just trying to keep up. Their heads on the water and they're just trying to keep up with it, as opposed to being proactive and setting, the right expectations and following through on the process as they need to. Let me just get to a couple of comments here because I don't want to go too far. Jerry says, never sell from your wallet, but sell from a benefit to the customer. You have to show a genuine interest in the customer and their needs. Customers can read fake care. And that's why I say it starts at the very beginning, because if we take the time to explain to them what we're going to do. For us, we're in the car business, right? Cars are just what we do. But to a customer, a car is a huge responsibility, huge. So if we tell them right out of the gate at the sales to service handoff, hey, we understand a car is a huge responsibility for you. If it's okay with you, I want to take that responsibility off your shoulders. So every time you come in, we're going to look after the safety and performance of your vehicle and report to you on its condition. And here are just 2 examples of what we do. Show them. Send them a video afterwards that reminds them of what you just showed them. Send them a video before they come in on the confirmation. Hey, you're coming in next Thursday, just want to confirm. Just a reminder of what to expect when you come in. And then you execute on that when they come in. So you build and earn, because Mike here, he says, just like every visit you discuss brake and tire measurements from the first visit, sell the green until those go yellow, and then plant the seed and allow them to plan for those expenses, which is just what I laid out, right?
Yes, and listen, while I agree 100% with what is being said, let's put this under pressure. In chaos, on that busy Wednesday, what do people have the tendency to do? They fall back on the normative cognition. That means they default on what is the most familiar behavior. So chaos is a culture. So if we step back further, these 5 disciplines that I talked about are designed under pressure moments where you can pause and change the behavior. All the items that you're talking about from an activity only happen when the discipline to the behavior changes the outcome. And if you focus on the one, right, the one rule, you just used a great example. Every time this week we do a recommended service, we're going to do this step. That's our one thing this week. One thing, not 10, not 20, one thing. Because as they get busy, they don't get better.
Right.
Pressure moments. Under the lamp, what does it feel like?
Wayne said before, you can't build relationship and trust if you're constantly rushing. Jerry, discipline will control the chaos. Be like a pilot during a plane crash. I wish you wouldn't use that example, Jerry, because I'm on planes every day.
Yeah, we fly quite a bit. So, but that's okay. I got the concept.
I get it.
Yeah.
And Jeremy says hello, everyone. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Jeremy. So I use real scenarios because I think many times we, as people that are vested in helping others get better, we have the tendency to see things at this level, right? And so essentially what we have to do is get at eye level under pressure in the moment, and we change the disciplines that change the behavior. What most managers fall into is I get my report on Monday, my doc, my GM report, call it whatever you want, right? And we focus on the metric. The first thing we do is lean into the metric.
Yeah.
We don't change the outcome. We lean into the metric, right? So the metric is what we call lagging data. It means it's already happened.
Yeah.
So if you want to do leading data, then you got to understand what's happening in the moment. I'll give you another scenario. I was talking to a fixed ops director about doing some learning and development with their team. And he said to me, I said, well, what do your advisors' current day looks like? And he said, well, they answer phones for appointments. They do service drive write-up. They do status calls. They do outbound calls to try and schedule new appointments. And they are responsible for doing all of the handing off all the work to the technicians. So they're the dispatcher. So if we simplify that in the chaos, what do we do for the disciplines? I always say if you're having revenue generating people doing non-revenue generating people, John likes to call it, it's based on a book, but it's mailroom work, right? It's If you're doing inbound calls for appointments, you're a revenue producing person that is focused on non-revenue producing activity.
And you're wasting your time.
Well, you're not as effective. So what's more important, the person in front of me or the person calling in to set an appointment? And by the way, if you do too many things, oh, Mike just says it, I see that right there. If you do too many things as an advisor, you can't focus on the one thing that changes the byproduct. So as we look through our lens as coaches, as consultants, or people with Coach Mike's experience, we see the outcome. Where I want to focus tonight is the behavior.
Right.
If we focus on the behaviors, the byproduct is better outcomes. But it takes small steps. It takes a strategy. I loved your card that you showed what the expectations were, but that has to be defined. It has to be mapped. And what do? We're too busy putting out fires. We're working in chaos that we can't focus on the fundamental. So I don't know if you've ever read the book. Mike said earlier, wow. Jeffrey Gitomore's book. If you're in the audience, I'm going to encourage. I'm not getting paid to promote this, but I'm gonna actually tell you the best book. It's called Customer Satisfaction is Worthless. Customer Loyalty is Priceless. It's by Jeffrey Gittimore. And in the book, he talks about the wow experience, to Coach Mike's point. So I would advise any manager, if you really want to change the culture, begin by understanding what the customer experience is supposed to be like. Jeffrey Gittimore's book, maybe you could put it in the notes. It is Jeffrey Gittimore, and it's Customer Satisfaction is Worthless, Customer Loyalty is Priceless. Great book. And in there, he actually has cards in the book that talk about the wow experience. I would really recommend you do that.
Tamra said, hello, the principle, the same changing because the input to change the output, which is exactly what you said before.
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir.
Davis,
does Mike Vogel 100% agree? Give them time to take care of the customer. I would rather have an advisor write 12 productive ROs per day than 25 garbage ROs. And you know what? A lot of dealers don't understand this. The sweet spot is 12 to 15. That's it. You should have enough time to be able to do all the steps. And you know what? And part of changing the behavior is also avoiding the chaos. Because if you can avoid some of the chaos, then you have less chance of going back to those behaviors. And part of avoiding the chaos is understanding your call flows, how many calls are coming in, and limiting the number of calls that are coming in. Because that's what's hurting you. The person on the phone Hey, I dropped my car off at 7 a.m. I expect an answer because you didn't tell me when you were going to call. So I'm thinking I'm being ignored. At the same time, it's a double whammy here. You get punched twice in the head. The customer that stands in front of you is thinking, hey, I'm here. Why would you not focus on me and focus on somebody on the phone, right? So if we can cut back on the number of incoming calls, then they have the opportunity to spend time with the people there, and the people that are not calling know when to expect that call.
Well, and that again is, I go back to the original analogy I gave, revenue producing people doing non-revenue producing work, right? So they are doing mailroom work. They're not designed to do mailroom work. And to Jerry's point, the real world is we have less people in the service drive now. We have less people because why? Well, we have to shrink our personnel costs. So we give more to less people. So everyone's under stress. And instead of I think you said 12 or 15.
12 to 15 is the sweet spot.
Great. If that's the sweet spot, how do we maximize it? Because here's what most leaders find in the real world. They say, I have now 5 advisors because I want them to be 12 to 15. But I have advisor number 3, Tom, who isn't producing at the level of everyone else. All I'm going to do is go back to the metric. Tom, I've got 5 people in the service drive now, 5 advisors. I want you to handle 12 to 15. But I added another expense and Tom's results aren't there. So what do I do in the real world? I lean into the metric.
Right.
Change the behavior. I lean into the metric. That is where the rubber meets the road. In real chaos, in the real world environment, we could talk about process all we want, but until we align with that strategy and those 5 core behaviors, nothing changes, right? Nothing changes. And I'll go back, normative cognition. It's a real psychological term. People default to their normal, most familiar behavior, especially under stress. So if we want to change that behavior, we have to change the way we look at it, the way we lead through it. Doesn't change all the points that were made tonight because they're all relevant. But unless you change the behavior, nothing changes.
So then we have to look at it as when we onboard somebody, we have to take ownership of the fact that we need to set them up for success, and we need to follow all the steps so that it becomes the behavior for them.
Once you alter the behavior, you can start looking at, if you think about this, it's like anything. Input is the behavior, right? What are we designing the behavior to be? So you have to be disciplined as a leader, and you have to choose what the input is. Particles and cash from nowhere. Oh, that must be a book that Jeremy is referencing.
He also Wayne referenced, check out TED Talk Popsicle Moments.
Yes, that's a great TED Talk, by the way, Wayne. I've watched that as well.
Yeah, I'll watch that next. I have not seen that one. And let's see. Line model by Susan Michi. Change behavior output by tweaking inputs.
Just what I just said. All right.
Yeah. Build skills, knowledge, opportunity, shape your environment, motivation, boost desire, and rewards. Oh, the rewards is it's a whole nother topic that I'd love to get into. It's
a more robust topic, but what we attend, I'll just speak at the high level. What we tend to think as carrot and stick, right? That's what we think about in terms of rewards, carrot and stick. Well, the science is overwhelming that it's ineffective. Yet we continue to lead down that path. Every other industry is changing the way they're doing that, but in the auto industry, we stay with the carrot and stick.
There's a problem. What do? We get on the phone. I need you to send 3 large cheese pizzas. I need a pepperoni and a sausage.
Well,
Right.
and you know what we do? We host a meeting and we say, hey, Jeremy, Tom, Mary, you're not doing what you need to do. You better get your results up or I'm going to get someone else in here. I'm being melodramatic for a reason. Right. It's carrot and stick. If we want to sell something, Coach Mike and I have talked about this often. We want to do a bonus, right? Because what we're trying to do is incentivize the outcome. Well, that works temporarily. And what does the customer feel on the other end?
Pressure.
They know you're incentivized to sell me something.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's of value is as a customer, my perception, right?
Correct.
So again, we use that analogy of carrot and stick, and I think it's really relevant.
Yeah. I totally get that. Chris says I don't know what's going with this. That's not a comment we need to focus on.
I like Wayne's comment. You can put that one up there. A good leader models the expected behavior and holds everyone accountable. If I could just say, change one word, change accountable to responsible. People are responsible for the way they engage in your workplace. The accountability is to the manager. The individual's responsible. And I would just change that, just that one word, because I think that's where we get caught up.
How do you keep sales teams motivated? That is a whole nother show.
Motivation is extrinsic, right? We want something that is intrinsic. Motivation is temporary. Intrinsic behaviors is what creates the outcome. And so when we think about motivation in the carrot and stick world for sales, to be specific, it's, hey, we're going to hit these 5 goals this weekend. If we get there, everyone's going to get 1,000. This one's going to get this, and you're going to get that, sell this car. And again, all we're doing is altering the temporary behavior. Incentivize differently, approach it differently. We could have a whole show on this because I've studied the carrot and stick analogy from Dan Pink ad nauseum. So I understand the science behind it as well.
Yeah, let's do a show on motivation and recognition and rewards, because that's an area where I see a lot of people miss the boat on. And that'll be a very rich show. You and I will talk after the show ends here.
Yeah.
You and I will map that out, because that is a big missed opportunity also.
So again, I'll recommend another book. I'm an avid reader. So Dan Pink's book, Drive. It's an old book. And I've read it 3, maybe 5, probably 5 or 10 times. I don't even know how many times. I'd really recommend your audience to pick that book up as well.
Well, we had some technical glitches, but we're at the hour.
Yeah, that's good though, but we made up for it, I think.
I think so.
So before we close, I have one thought.
Go for it.
Performance doesn't change when leaders talk. It changes when leaders install behaviors. That's what the 5 disciplines are. 1 outcome, behavior before the metric, 10-minute of alignment, 30-second coaching, and the weekly learning labs. That's leadership rhythm inside pressure. So one question, when your team walks in tomorrow, what habit will actually be different? If one of those disciplines could change the way your team performs under pressure, what would that do inside your own organization? And if that's something you want to make real, reach out to me through LinkedIn. I'd welcome the opportunity to partner with you.
Joe, thank you very much, man. As always, I always love our talks. 2 car guys talking about the car business.
I love it too. Thank you.
To those watched tonight, I apologize for the technical glitch in the beginning. Hopefully StreamYard will get their act together at some point real soon. I re-upped my contract with them. The options are kind of limited, But in any event, I hope you have a safe and successful next week, and be on the lookout for the next announcement. Truth be told, I have so many things going on in my life between my entrepreneurial pursuits, the training, the marketing, and all the things that I do, that it is impossible to commit to doing a show every single week. There's just too much going on. And, when there's only 24 hours in a day, and I have to at least try to get 6 hours worth of sleep. So if I could extend my day by 6 hours, life would be great. But for now, we do what we can. So I appreciate the support and everybody that watches the show, whether it be live or on the replay. And we'll announce the next show very soon. And Joe, stay on while we go off here. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.